There was some good, there was some bad, and there was some ugly for both Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders in the Browns preseason opener.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast, and proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road right here at the Locked On Network and also over at Browns Roundtable. And listen, there's plenty of standouts. We'll get to those, plus some depth issues are rearing their ugly head. The interception shouldn't overshadow what was a promising outing by Shedeur Sanders. And Deshaun Watson actually looks comfortable running the Browns offense for once. Those are the big things on the docket today. And we'll start with the two quarterbacks. We'll go one here in this first segment with the starter and Deshaun Watson. We'll get to Shedeur Sanders coming up. But listen, it was not a perfect performance for Deshaun Watson against the Bears on Saturday, nor should I think anybody should have expected it to be a perfect performance for Deshaun Watson. But there was some promising moments for a quarterback who was making his first start in a game setting in nearly 2 years since he ruptured his Achilles in October of 2024. He was 11 of 15, 126 yards, led a touchdown drive, led a field goal drive, and there was a stretch there on the second drive that he was out there with the first team where he completed 4 passes in 5 plays, 4 consecutive passes in those 5 plays as well on the ones that were actually pass attempts. And they were moving the ball efficiently up and down the field. I thought that for the first time in a while, and even given what we saw at training camp to this point, you saw a more consistent Deshaun Watson who was dropping back and throwing the football decisively in some good spots and giving his guys a chance to make plays. There was a nice ball to Denzel Boston. There was one on like kind of a comeback route down the like 10 or so yards down the field. There was Jerry Jeudy on a slant on that same drive, the second drive of the game, and the one he was out there with the ones. After completing a bunch of those passes, he was able to then hit Harold Fannin Jr. in stride over the middle of the field on 3rd and 5, I guess it was, for what would have been a first down, and Fannin just flat out dropped it. And so they ended up settling for a field goal instead. And so I thought this was some of the most efficient and effective offense and quarterbacking that we've seen from Deshaun Watson in a long time. Now, listen, there's context to all of this. There's context to everything in this conversation about the quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson was doing that against mostly the second team of the Chicago Bears. I don't think the Bears really played any of their significant starters on defense. There might have been a couple out there, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But they really weren't going out there mimicking the Browns in terms of trying to play their starters for a significant amount of time. And certainly on that second drive, when the Browns kept their entire first team out there, even the first team O-line, they had already kind of pivoted to playing backups and that type of thing. So, there's that matters in the grand scheme of the conversation. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it and say that like Deshaun Watson is the bona fide starter and that he showed that like this wasn't Deshaun Watson from 2020. I want to be clear about that. Like anybody who is maybe holding out hope that version of him is coming back at some point, this was not that. This was a quarterback who felt like in more of like a game manager type role, who showed that he could move the football effectively and throw the football on time to guys that were open against a second team defense. And, for the first time in a while in a game setting, showed some promising moments. That doesn't mean that he's won the job. It doesn't mean that it's, his to lose. I mean, maybe it is his to lose in the eyes of Tom Monken. It certainly sort of seems like he maybe has at least a slight advantage, but there were still problems. We talk about all the pre-snap issues. Most of those came with Deshaun Watson. There was a delay of game penalty. There was a play in the first quarter where they had to call timeout after, in the huddle because they couldn't get set initially. So some of those bigger issues did, rear their ugly head with Deshaun more so than Shedeur Sanders. And so that's a good thing for Shedeur and a negative for Deshaun. And it wasn't all great. Like, there were some bad moments. There were still some of the dirted balls that we've come to know from Deshaun over the years here in Cleveland. There was the fumble, which wasn't his fault. It was just straight up Austin Barber got beat, and the defensive end was able to get a hand on it and strip it out of his hand, and it was a strip sack fumble that the Bears recovered and then turned into points. But again, I don't put that on Deshaun fully. Maybe he could have gotten rid of the ball a little sooner. It looked like it was a play where they were trying to get rid of it quickly, and he kind of held it a little bit longer and maybe wanted to take off instead. But he dropped back to pass and then throwing in his throwing motion, had the ball stripped out before his arm was going forward. So it ends up being a fumble. So that wasn't great. And then the 2-minute drive that Todd Monken was so adamant that he wanted his ones to get, which, before the half, that didn't really go too well for Deshaun, where they got the ball with about a minute 52 on the clock, so just under 2 minutes to go. The drive ended up being 3 plays. You gained 1 yard. There was a penalty in there, and you end up punting the ball away pretty quickly after just 28 seconds. And so that wasn't obviously what Tom Monken was looking for when it comes to that 2-minute drive that he was so adamant his first team got at the end of the half there. He got the exact scenario he wanted, didn't end up really working out the way that he had hoped. And so you were left with a little bit of an unsatisfying taste in your mouth in that regard. And so it felt like when things got sort of sped up or they were trying to move the ball more quickly. And by the way, those are some of the drills at practice where Deshaun's maybe looked the best, is like that 2-minute offense situation, trying to get in a field goal range. We saw that just on Wednesday to end practice. Both quarterbacks executed the 2-minute drive or the under a minute drive perfectly and then set up for the field goal. So you kind of thought that was an area of strength for Deshaun, and then it proved to not maybe be that. And when you're going against, second and third stringers, you're hoping for a little bit more there, but it didn't happen that way. And so what started more positive for Deshaun ended sort of sour, if you will. But again, the bar was low. The expectation for Deshaun going into this outing was going to be super low because nobody really knew what to expect. And other than bad, based on what we had seen from him in previous seasons, based on the fact that he was coming off of another injury for this team, there was very low expectations for what he was going to give you. And so I think that you saw some encouraging signs that he can be a competent quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, at least in 2026. Again, it wasn't otherworldly. I'm not sitting here making bold predictions that like Deshaun Watson's back. I would never do that. I still think he's largely a broken player, but there were some positive signs of life from him. He looked comfortable for the first time operating the offense that we've seen in a long time. And so he's now put his latest, he's now put some stuff on tape. That's pretty positive, and showed Todd Monken what he wanted to see. Todd talked about after the game, like wanting to see how he felt, how Deshaun looked leading up to the game. Wanted to see how Deshaun felt in the huddle and operating things. And he could tell he like had just joy in playing football again. And so that was important to him to see how he just kind of moved as a quarterback and getting back out there playing football again. And so I think Todd felt like he's pretty satisfied. And so now, like I said, Deshaun has put he had his chance to put some stuff on tape in a game. And now it's going to be Shedeur's turn next week because Todd reconfirmed that Shedeur will start next week. Todd did talk about after the game what his plan is for that joint practice with the Bills on Thursday. So we'll elaborate on that a little bit further as we pivot a little bit to talk about Shedeur Sanders' performance, which the interception is going to overshadow it. But I honestly walked away from Shedeur's day with some overall positive thoughts. Same way I did, I think, about Deshaun, with, yes, some negatives and some growing pains and some things to improve on, like most quarterbacks this time of year. So We'll talk about that and what the plan is for that joint practice with the Bills for both these QBs on Thursday, coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. Just make a free pick for who you think will hit a home run in their game. If you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily Dingers is a fun way to stay engaged with every day's games, whether you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on matchups across the league. You can ride the hot hand. You can play a matchup between a certain batter and a pitcher that maybe he owns. You can just turn to guys that play for your favorite team. However you want to do it, every day is a new adventure with baseball, and every day is a new adventure with Daily Dingers. Gives you another reason to pay attention before the first pitch. So are you ready to play your game today? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. Conversation continues. We highlighted Deshaun Watson. Solid, positive, mostly performance for him. Keeping in mind, he was doing it against the second string and, and maybe even third stringers by the end. I don't know what the Bears depth chart fully looks like, but there was positive signs that he could operate the offense in some good moments with some bad sprinkled in. Again, I started the show. There was good, there was bad, there was ugly for all the quarterbacks. And for Shedeur, the ugly came on a pretty brutal interception, which ended up being his last throw of the game in total. He tried to come back out for the series after, and Todd Monken basically said, like, no, like, we're done. You're going to take a breather. It's okay. And that was at the start of the fourth quarter that he did that. So it was an unfortunate way to see his day end on a play that was honestly beautifully designed by Todd Monken. It was basically inside guy running a skinny post. It was, I think, Gage Larvadan, or no, it was Cole Wilson. And he ran it perfectly to pull the safety with him and open up underneath a dig for Malachi Corley. And the dig was open. He had his guy. And there was a little bit of pressure kind of bearing down in the A gap. And Shedeur just put a little bit too much on it, sailed it too high, and it was intercepted over the top of Malachi Corley. And so it was just kind of one of these, it was an unfortunate moment, like I said, and a tough way to end the day for him, which had, again, plenty of positive moments in its own right. But I don't want the interception to overshadow some of the good that we saw from Shedeur. And that's my key point in this, because we've talked so much about him growing as a player, him needing to show that growth, and him needing to show that growth in game-like settings like this. And I've always said, Shedeur's a gamer. When the lights are the brightest, when he's on that stage specifically, when it's an in-game scenario, he tends to rise to the occasion. He tends to put his best stuff out there in those spots. He's not a practice player. He's a game player. And I thought that was the case again today, aside from the interception. And I'll tell you, like, all the things that we've highlighted with Shedeur when it comes to the improvements he's made to his game and the work that he's put in, I think you saw that stuff. There was two throws I want to highlight in particular. The one is the one everybody's talking about, where he recognized it was cover zero. It was one of the first throws that he made when he entered the game. And he recognized that it was cover zero, and he drops back, and he sees Luke Floria on a sort of a crossing route down the field, and in the pocket, holds firm, doesn't drift, pressure bearing down on him. He gets crushed by one or two defenders at the same time, but stood in the pocket, delivered a confident throw to Gage Larvadan across the field. And Luke Floria across the field. And Floria broke it off for a big 35-yard gain. That throw said a lot about how Shedeur's improved as a player, how he's improved in his pocket awareness and understanding, like, hey, listen, there's pressure coming, but I'm going to stand here and make this throw. That was a telling throw in regards to his game and how he's improved as a player. And it showed on the highlight. Like it's one of the highlights of the game without question. And then I thought it was interesting because the other throw that I liked, the throw that I thought was pretty telling to his improvements, and there was this doesn't mean there weren't other ones, but the two that really stood out to me in the moment. The second one came on the same drive about 3 plays later. The Browns are at the Chicago 12-yard line, or no, 9-yard line. And Sanders dropped back, felt a little pressure, stepped up in the pocket, almost like he was going to scramble. But before he did, he reset his feet. He got a firm quarterback base that you want to see when they're about to throw the football, and then looked to his right, and he saw standing there Imagn Marshall on a check down, and he got in the football, and Imagn Marshall gained 4 yards before he was pushed out of bounds. And after the game, I thought it was fascinating. Shedeur Sanders said, he was asked, like, what throw was your best throw? And he highlighted that throw. And I agree with him because it was a moment that showed you. In the past, in those types of plays, we know what the big critique was on Shedeur coming out. He drifts in the pocket. He just keeps drifting back and back and back and back. It was like Chris Berman. And he would get himself in trouble that way. You saw a concerted effort to not let that be the case. And it speaks to the work he's put in to perfect his footwork, break that habit, and just take what the defense is giving you, but reset yourself and make sure your feet are right. I thought that was a very telling throw. I thought the Floria throw was a very telling throw. To me, those 2 plays told you a lot about the work that he's put in. Yes, context matters. He was doing it against third stringers. He was doing it against maybe, I don't think there was any second stringers left in the game at that point, but who knows? Second stringers, third stringers, fourth stringers, whatever it was, I get it. But again, we're going off of what we're seeing. And in those moments, the things that Shedeur has been most, the things that Shedeur has shown you at camp, the things that Shedeur has shown you in terms of his preparation for the season, those things came out in a real game setting, and that is crucial. That is huge. So I was impressed by that. I was. Again, the interception is the interception. It's something you got to learn from, and it was a bad throw. We can call a spade here on the show. I'm as objective as I can be. Like, he can't make that throw and miss that badly and let it be an interception for the other team. But some of those other moments before then, I thought were encouraging for Shedeur Sanders, and it speaks to the improvements that he's made in his game. Does it mean he's for sure going to be the franchise quarterback? No. Does it mean for sure he's going to be the starter, name the starter in about a week from now after the Bills game? Not necessarily. But it means that he's put in the work, and it should make everybody more intrigued to see more from him and see him play this season to find out what he can be. That's just how I feel about it. And so as far as what's next is concerned, because Todd Monken did lay out the plan for the week. There's the joint practice with the Bills on Thursday. That is a big one. Here, let me just start by saying this. This next week is the biggest week for both these guys, Deshaun and Shedeur, to decide who the starting quarterback is going to be. This week is going to determine who the starting quarterback is. Starting today with that preseason performance from Deshaun and starting with the ones, and Shedeur's performance that followed, from the game against the Bears to the practices to the joint practice to the game next week against the Bills, where Shedeur will start with the ones. This is the most important week for determining who the Browns starting quarterback will be week 1 of the season. I say that with no reservations. That is 100% true. We will know by the end of next week, by this time next week, who the Browns starting quarterback is probably going to be. And so understanding that, Todd Monken laid it out. He's planning on still starting Shedeur Sanders next week with the ones against the Bills. I don't know what the Bills' plan is. I'm going to assume they're not playing Josh Allen, but you never know, especially after a joint practice. And Todd Monken could still change his mind too. Maybe, again, we got to always now that we've seen him do it once, where he changed the rotation with Deshaun and Shedeur, and Deshaun got Shedeur's day with the ones. now we got to leave room for the idea that he could just change his mind and that could happen. So there's always that. But his plan right now is for Shedeur Sanders to still start that game. And as far as the joint practice is concerned, he said after this one tonight that he will be splitting the reps evenly with the first team between Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders for that joint practice with Buffalo. As expected, those guys should split those reps. You only have one joint practice. If you had 2 days, it'd be a little easier. You give one day and give one the other day, but he doesn't have that luxury, so they're both going to split the reps. That'll be a very telling day for both, and then you'll get the preseason game next Saturday, and we'll be off and running with a decision of who the starting quarterback's going to be. That's how it's going to probably play out. That's what we should expect for the week ahead. I thought both Deshaun and Shedeur showed some promising things, some positive things. Again, there was good, bad, and ugly for both. And now it's really on, because what lies ahead in the next 6 to 7 days is going to be the pivotal litmus tests for what Todd Monken's final decision is on who the starting quarterback will be. Beyond the quarterback position, there were some other things to take in from this game, some other standouts, and why I think the Browns roster depth was on full, or lack of roster depth, I should say, was on full display against the Bears on Saturday. We'll get to that coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is the all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales to accounting to inventory to marketing and everything, it all just works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success isn't about talent. It's about having everyone working towards the same goal. And that's true in sports too. Think about it. Cleveland traded Myles Garrett this summer, and you can tell it wasn't just some reactionary move. The organization had a vision. They knew what they wanted in a trade package back. They stuck to their guns, and now you're seeing results. They got Jared Verse. He looks like he's poised to be really, really successful and really, really good. And it worked out that way because everyone stuck to the playbook. Great organizations win because operations matters, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try it for free at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. All right, final segment here in our reaction show following the Browns' 34-10 loss to the Chicago Bears. And the scoreboard is the scoreboard. It doesn't tell the full picture of what we are trying to sort of capture with this game. I think there was still a lot that we learned about this team. And I have some deeper thoughts on that over at Browns Roundtable if you want to check them out. But as far as outside of the quarterback position goes, I do think there was a lot of other things that deserve being mentioned. And I wanted to highlight a couple other standouts in this game, starting with Michael Coates Jr. Michael Coates Jr. is an undrafted rookie corner who I think over the last couple days, the last week or so, I started to notice him making some more plays at practice. It was a good thing to see. Really, really good thing to see. And that was parlayed into what we saw on Saturday, where he put together a really strong performance before leaving with an injury. He finished the game with 2 tackles combined, had 2 pass breakups, and had an interception that was just a great read by him. It was zone coverage. He dropped, read the quarterback's eyes, kind of baited the throw, and then just cut in front of it and picked it off. Just nicely done by Michael Coates Jr. and a really, really good play. And so that was good. That was good to see. He's in a room that, as we know, is short on depth and short on talent behind Denzel Ward and Tyson Campbell. He has been maybe at least slightly a rising star for this group as a whole. And it was good to see him come out and play that, put that on tape in a game and give you something to look forward to. Now, as things stand right now, like it feels, given what he did today, I think it's like you feel pretty good about saying he can make this roster because there's just nobody else to really compete with. But the injury throws a wrench into that. And I'll come back to that here in a second, because this is one of the reasons why the depth issue was on full display today. But real quick, I wanted to highlight Winston Reed as well. Winston Reed in this game was also great, running all over the place, making plays. He finished in second on the team in terms of total tackles. He had 5. He broke up 3 passes to lead the team in that category. Just all around, a great performance from Winston Reed. And all of a sudden, like a linebacker group that I thought also lacked a lot of depth behind Carson Schlesinger and Quincy Williams, feels like it has some guys that they can maybe turn to between him and Easton Mascarenas-Arnold, who's been really good at camp. And he had a pretty solid day as well. He had 4 tackles in this game combined. So there were some good moments from him. Like the linebacker group suddenly feels like it has some guys in it that you can count on if somebody were to get hurt. So that was an encouraging sign for him. I'll also just quickly highlight the two rookie wide receivers. Denzel Boston only caught 1 pass, but it was like proof of concept for him doing it in games. And it was a nice play, curl route, caught it, turned up field, got a few extra yards. Really nicely done by him. He's going to be a star in this offense. And so is Casey Concepcion. Casey Concepcion did a little bit of, he showed everything in his arsenal in this game. He showed you he can return punts. He returned 1 for 31 yards. He showed you he can catch the ball and make plays happen after the catch. He had 27 yards receiving on 3 receptions in this game. And he showed you that he can rush the football, run the football on those sweet plays that Todd Monken works in, and he's been doing it at practice a little bit, worked it in today, and it led to a touchdown. An incredible balance by him to not get knocked out of bounds, keep his footing, and then dive for the pylon. Just an incredible play. Those 2 guys were awesome and deserve a shout-out. KC is going to be making plays for this team for a long time, and it's why I think like he's poised to be the leading receiver in terms of receptions, because they're just going to get the ball in his hand and let and see what he can do with it. So really good stuff from those guys. I think all of them deserve to be called out here in terms of other standouts. Now, back to the depth thing, though. Michael Coates Jr. got hurt in this game. Also getting hurt in this game from the secondary was Nate Evans, who is another undrafted rookie corner who started in place of Denzel Ward in this game. And I'm glad they didn't play Denzel Ward, because put him in bubble wrap, don't need to see him. So he got hurt later in the game as well. Coates' injury was an ankle. Evans' injury was a quad. And so there's 2 more corners in this room that just keeps getting depleted by injuries that go down in this game. The Browns had already signed late in the week Jeremiah McClendon as another undrafted rookie to play in the cornerback room. So there's a desperate need for guys in that room specifically. But then also, I think you saw that the offensive line down the depth chart is lacking some talent, and that more guys are, there's certainly some injuries there too. Zach Zinner didn't play today, and there's been some others that have struggled at times. But like, I think the depth at that room is an issue. You're starting, and just given how bad the defense was as that game went on, and you were playing against the third stringers of the Bears, and they were just giving up these chunk plays. I mean, you're not expecting that defense to be lights out down the depth chart, right? But for them to struggle the way that they did, give up a lot of chunk plays, I think there's a clear desperation when it comes to depth on this team. And that's not a surprise. It's not a secret. But to see it kind of play out in real time, and especially at certain position groups like corner, where guys just keep getting hurt, the Browns are going to have to keep looking to add to this roster and find more guys and take more bites at the apple. And that might come at the offensive line, might come at corner. We know they're already looking into veteran defensive ends because they had Zadarius Smith in this week, and they had previously had Jadeveon Clowney in. So I think that was something that was clearly on display in this game, and something that isn't just going to be a quick fix. There's not like a good option out there necessarily to like fix some of these things, but they got to keep trying because depth is a real concern right now for this team. And that was another thing that sort of stood out about this game. We'll have plenty more to talk about, react to in the days and weeks ahead. Again, biggest week yet as far as the quarterback competition is concerned. We're going to find out a lot about who the Browns starting quarterback will be coming up this week with that joint practice, with the Bills game, all of that. Maybe this time next week we'll be talking about who the starting quarterback is going to be. But if you like what you heard, hit that subscribe button. Make Locked On Browns your first listen every day, wherever you get your podcasts, and at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Don't forget about the Everydayer Club, your chance to get the show ad-free wherever you get your podcasts. And just head to lockedonbrowns.supercast.com to sign up and learn more. Don't forget about my friends at Locked On Cavs and Locked On Guardians as well. Thank you for being on Everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll be back at it on Monday, talking more about this game, more about what lies ahead, and certainly reacting to whatever unfolds at practice as well. Talk to you then, Cleveland.